Check.
Oh, that was loud. Scared me.
Check.
Yeah. We're all good. Yeah.
Good evening. Thanks for coming this evening. My name is Jody McKay. I'm the current school board president at Fort Cherry. I'd like to introduce you to the board members that are here and our administration. Here, use this one. I was trying not to hold it too close. We have our treasurer, Mr. Eugene Briggs, Mr. Louis Ursett, Mrs. Cindy Gaskill. Okay, Mrs. Dawn Friori, Mrs. Melinda Arrett, and Mrs. Tina Cottrell. We have our superintendent, Jill Jacoby, or Dr. Jacoby, our business manager, Jessica Driley, and Mr. Dan Mayer. This meeting is to provide an overview on our district's capital projects plans, including the incorporation of air ventilation upgrades. As a board and administration, we believe it's important for residents, taxpayers, parents, and students to understand the status of our district's finances and long-range plans. In addition, we believe it's important to provide a forum to gain insight from our community about upcoming decision-making processes. Dr. Jacoby and Mrs. Driley will be giving a presentation on our district's finances, capital projects timeline, air ventilation options, and potential bond needs. Once the presentation is ended, we invite you to share your thoughts and comments by stepping up to the nearest microphone. As per the board policy, you need to be a resident of the district to make a comment. You'll need to state your name, the town you live in, and you'll have 3 minutes to speak. Once the 3-minute mark has arrived, if you're still speaking, you'll be notified. As a reminder, tonight's town hall meeting is only regarding our district's capital projects related to air ventilation, and only comments or thoughts related to the capital projects will be entertained. I want to turn it over now to Dr. Jacoby and Mrs. Driley for the presentation.
Good evening. My name is Jessica Driley, and I'm the business manager for the district. We're going to go over a quick rundown of our district finances, some of the prior completed capital projects that we have done, our proposed future capital projects, district's cuts and additions that we have done, a bond outline, and then we'll open the floor for comments and questions. Key components for funding for the district include enrollment, local, state, and federal revenue, and state mandates. Some of our state mandates include special ed, cyber charter tuition, PSERS, which PSERS is our biggest state mandate. Enrollment for the district this is how the outline is. It's been continually decreasing over the past 10 years. Our current enrollment for the district is 491 at our elementary center and 516 at our high school. Key points to note for our revenue: millage rates have increased steadily since 2013-14. Prior to that, taxes were not increased in 7 years. Our main source of revenue is state revenue, which is subsidy payments that we receive from the state. And Fort Cherry remains 44% funded by local taxpayers. This outlines where we get our revenue from. The top line is our state revenue. State revenue includes basic ed funding, special ed funding, transportation funding. The red middle line is our local funding, which is funding we receive from our local taxpayers, which includes real estate taxes, earned income taxes, and transfer taxes. The bottom line is the blue line is our federal revenue, and that consists of title funding, which you can see is very minimal. Our millage rates for the past 5 years are included. The star for 17-18 includes the reassessment that came through in Washington County, where we had to adjust our millage rate down to account for that reassessment. So every year that we raise taxes, we only receive an additional about $150,000 to $200,000 in additional revenue. Some expenditure points to note. Expenditures are pretty much primarily driven by contractual staffing costs, which include payroll, salaries, benefits, and our PSERS obligations. PSERS rate currently is 33.43%. That means the district contributes 33% of everybody's salary to the state pension system. PSERS stands for Public School Employees Retirement System. Everybody that is currently actively employed for the district contributes into the PSERS system. Our employees contribute roughly between 6 and 12%. The school district contributes roughly about 33.4%. And that equates to about $2.5 million in PSERS annually. And it is continuing to increase every year. So this is our pie chart of where our expenditure, what we pay out every year. The red part, the 7.46 million, is salaries. The yellow part is benefits. The brownish part is special ed costs. The 548,000 is cyber charter, and then the gray part is everything else that we pay. That includes utilities, equipment, bond payments. So 3.6 million is basically all we have left to spend in our budget. These are how our debt service payments since 2010. We paid off our 2005 bond in 2013, and then we did get a $3.5 million bond in 13-14, and that's what we currently have outstanding and what we're paying on.
So next we're going to talk about facilities and what our programming and personnel pertains to. So we'll talk about completed capital projects, what we're looking to do in the next 3 years. You'll see our 3-year game plan, our air ventilation options, programming changes, and personnel changes that we have. So first of all, our completed capital projects that we've done since 2014, we've done 3 major projects, and those incorporate a new boiler system that affects both buildings. That's our heating system. We've upgraded the water lines. If you go down the hill towards McDonald, you'll see on the right-hand side there's a little building, brick building. That used to be our water pumps. We pump the water up the hill into the tower, the Fort Cherry iconic tower that's here, and then that would drain into our buildings. We no longer use a tower. That is obsolete. And the water pumps 2 years ago became inoperable, so we had to do something. So that's when we came into adding the new water lines. And then number 3 was replacement of both roofs, and we have brand new roofs on both of our schools. So here's some pictures of the upcoming projects that we're looking to address. And we've broke them into the next 3 summers. So for next summer, 2019, we're looking to replace some hardware in our kitchens. Our kitchens are aging. Both of the buildings have 30-plus year usage, so we need to address those through our oven systems. We've started with that, and we will continue to replace those. We're in phase 2 of upgrading our LED lighting. If you've been in either gym or the hallways of both buildings, you can tell that it's a little brighter. That's because of the LEDs. We're in phase 1 of updating the carpeting in both buildings, and you can see our total costs at the bottom there. 2020, we'll look to repair the canopies, which if you go back here, you can see that there is a lot of need, not only just visually, but also structurally. We would like to replace the PA systems in both buildings. They're antiquated and sometimes work, sometimes don't. So that is something that is a definite need to upgrade. And then we'll be in phase 3 of our LED, and we'll be in phase 2 of our carpeting, which will give us a total of $500,000. And then finally, for our 3-year plan, we'll be looking at the final phase of our carpeting, and that's replacing carpeting in the classrooms, and then our district parking lots and driveways, which will be a $300,000. So when we look at air ventilation, we're only talking about the classrooms. We're not talking about any of the big areas. That big areas, I mean both the gyms, the auditorium, and the cafeterias will not be air conditioned along with the hallways. So we're just looking at talking about the classrooms. And if you see here, these are the ventilation units that are in the classrooms right now. What one of the proposals is to replace these ventilation units with a hot and cold water system. That would allow for a cooling system in the warmer months. And that's the number 3 price tag of $3 million. If we decide not to do the cooling option and we just replace the air ventilators, which are at their end of life, they're at 28 years, and between 28 and 30 is when they become problematic. That would be a $700,000 price tag. And then finally, our other option is to not do anything and just do break and fix. So the board is looking at these 3 options, and that's why you're here tonight, because they want to hear your input. So projects that we've cut so far, I hate to say that we've cut them. What we've done is we've taken programs that really aren't as optimal moving into 21st century and replacing them with other things. So starting off with project cuts that we're looking to not do if we do air conditioning at this point is a locker room renovation, cutting out the office flooring, district van, dump truck, things like that, all the way down to replacement of the gym bleachers. The one thing up there is number 7, which is the chimney. One reason why we will have to replace that at some point is with the new boiler system, the condensation does break down the inside part of the chimney, and it could crumble eventually years down, so it needs to be shortened. So at some point we will shorten the chimney. So programming and personnel, these are the changes that we've done to be a little more 21st century. We've cut our alternative ed program. At the point of cutting it, we only had 2 students that were going to be enrolled in that, and it was a $75,000 program. We cut home economics, again, for 21st century learning. We wanted to add computer science and other elements that the kids would be using as a move to career readiness. We also cut AR, which is the reading program, and implemented other reading type programs that were free. And we also eliminated Tech Lit, but we infused that into our STEAM program. And if you know anything about STEAM, that's science, technology, mathematics, art. So infusing all of that together. So the students still learning, we wanted to add computer. Huh. Yeah, I got to talk to myself. So in taking these 4 programs out, we added these. And one mandate from the state is you have to have a certain amount of AP courses. So we kept our AP courses, and what CHS is College in the Classroom at the high school. Restorative programming is talking about anti-bullying and character education programming. We implemented one-to-one curriculum at the high school, which means every student 7th through 12th is receiving a Chromebook. We have an innovation and design lab studio where our students are able to do engineering at 3 different levels. We have full-time life skills. Those students were students that we would have outplaced and paid about $80,000 per student, and we brought that back into our system and are able to be a much more efficient and effective program. We have a STEAM and makerspace, and then the elementary went to an 8-day rotation to allow for more special opportunities. So personnel, this is always the contentious part that people say you keep cutting people. A lot of that comes out of retirements. It's not necessarily that people are losing their jobs, but one thing that we do down at the bottom here is we eliminate professional positions through attrition. Attrition means when they retire, we just don't replace them. As Jess said, our enrollment has decreased. We are moving from, when I started here 18 years ago, we had 1,800 students. Today, we have 1,000. As of this moment, today, we only have 1,000 students in the district. So we've lost 800 over the past 15, 16 years. And that's why a lot of the cuts have to happen, is because you're just not getting that same subsidy due to enrollment. And then finally, 2 added elements to our budget as of last year was pay to participate. Avella, Burgestown, and a few other school districts in the area had already implemented this prior to us. Our costs are nowhere near what theirs are. Students are only paying $30 per season compared to other districts that are paying anywhere from $1 to $175 for their sports. And then we also implemented a parking pass fee for students who come and park, and we're hoping to offset some costs other ways by implementing that. This was a little confusing the last time we had this presentation. This by no means we're going to cut any of these. This is current programming that's not required by the school code. School code outlines exactly what every school in Pennsylvania has to offer to each student. These are elements of our programming that we have and we want to keep, but we don't, per official announcement, have to have them. So I always like to show this to say we're doing a great job here at Fort Cherry because these are all the areas that we still have and we're able to do on that very stringent budget that we work on. When Jess said we only have that gray area to work under. So if cuts were in the future, these are the areas we look at. The board always looks at this chart and says what are areas that we would be willing to cut. And at this point, we haven't had to take anything off the table. So our 3-year costs for our updates and repairs and upgrades are as follows. We would have a total of about $1 million. If we add the air conditioning and the chilling units that I talked about, those UV systems that are called unit ventilators, that would be a $3 million. And we would have to add a generator for that, which would make a proposed cost of $4.3 million. And Jess is going to talk about the bonds, which bonds, people get confused who aren't in education. Bonds means loans, so what a district can take out in a loan.
So here's what our annual bond payments currently look like. Right now, we pay about $255,000 a year for our current outstanding bond that we have. And we're going to pay that until school year 2034. If we were going to take out a $2 million bond, that would increase our debt budget to $142,000 a year. If we went ahead with the air conditioning units, we would be at a $4.5 million bond, which would increase to $178,000 a year. And we would pay that until school year 2048. A moderate debt burden is considered 4% of your budget. Even if we added a $4.5 million bond, we would still be 2.4% of budget, which is, way below the moderate debt burden. Thank you. So how our timeline looks is this month is when we would, as a board, determine what amount of bond that we want to take out. Between October and December is when we work with our underwriters and bankers and come up with the bond. And then in December, January, we would send out RFPs for the air conditioning project. And we would start that in the summer of 2019. So we're going to open the floor to questions and comments.
Hi, good evening. My name is Tina Cottrell. I've been on the board for about 7 years. This is our second town hall meeting. Thanks for coming out. It's raining out there. We had a pretty good meeting last time. We had a nice crowd. We had a lot of questions. We want to open the floor to you guys in case you have any comments you want to make. Give us your thoughts. Do you have a question about the presentation that you just saw? President McKay already stated that comments and questions have to abide by our board policies. You have 3 minutes. You have to state your name and the district that you reside in and come on up and take the mic. Anybody have a question? Want to come up? Looks like it's you. Is this working?
Hello. Hello. My name.
Yeah. Here, I'll trade you.
Hello. Hello. Okay. My name is Roger Kendall. I live at 1620 Valley View Road in Balger. I was a graduate of Fort Cherry High School 35 years ago. I'm also the chairman of the Robinson Township Supervisors. And 2 or 3 short years ago, this board approached us and asked us for a donation towards your chillers. And we have a $680,000 budget, and here you are with what I'm looking at, over $18 million. Bad planning on your part doesn't make an issue for the future for the next 20 years of payments. First of all, as far as your blacktop, your parking lot, you can have it micro-paved for 1/3 the cost of pavement. Caruso will do that. You should look into that. Secondly, air conditioning, although it's a nice feature, very unnecessary when you're not even in the school for the hottest months of the summer. And as a taxpayer, I'm not real thrilled about an increase every year for the next 20 years. But that's just me and 2,000 residents of Robinson. No, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Here, I'm going to give you this. Thank you. That's why we've asked you all to come. Last week we had some for, some against. We want to know what you guys think, so we're open to hearing that. Come on up.
Thank you. Hi, my name's Audrey O'Neill. I'm from Midway. I have to actively disagree with you. I have a 5-year-old who just started school this year. I'm not prepared to take him home where he's so exhausted he can hardly keep his eyes open. He's drinking 2 bottles of water to try and rehydrate. Now, I don't know whether you realise how absolutely devastating it is for a mother not to be able to take her child to do after school sports because he's too tired to do them, because he spent his whole day in a classroom that is 90 degrees. Now, I'm not from here, but I know in Europe, we're not allowed in the classroom once it goes over a certain degree because it's not acceptable to your health. Now, I know what heat stroke is like. I know how it affects people, and I know it can get very serious. And I know kids and people who have ended up dead from heat stroke. I'm not prepared to take the chance of my child suffering a grievous illness for the sake of an air conditioning unit. Now, I've looked into it. You can get air conditioning units. I offered to buy an air conditioning unit for his classroom. The child was coming home soaking. I mean, it's not good for him. It's not good for any kid in the class. I've been in his class for half an hour and felt like I was going to pass out myself. You know, I just don't find it acceptable to have a classroom in this day and age that has no air conditioning. I don't care if it's for 5 months of the year, 2 months of the year. The option should still be there, especially for young kids. They don't drink during the classroom day because they can't be running out to the toilet all the time. You know, okay, I can understand that. But at the same time, they're kids. They need to be comfortable in a classroom. They need to be able to concentrate, not be falling asleep over the desk or not be soaking wet when they come out. You know, so I really feel an AC is very important, even if it's only for 2 months of the year. If it's for 3 weeks in the year. But it's not acceptable to put their health at risk for the sake of an air conditioning unit. I know it's expensive, but it's going towards the future. And I mean, is it going to get to the stage that we have a child that suffers grievous health issues because of the lack of an air conditioner?
Thank you. Anybody else? Oh.
I'm Jane Worthington. I live in McDonald, previously lived in Hickory. My children have attended Fort Cherry School since they started. I have a critically ill daughter, and she can't take the heat. She's a redhead, she's Irish, she sweats somewhat, but she doesn't sweat correctly. But she has a neurological disorder that we haven't even defined at this point. She is at risk at all times when these schools are this hot. And we have gotten permission for her to drink water. She has to drink water. If she doesn't drink water, she'll lose the sight in her eyes. I know that sounds like it doesn't correlate, but it does. She has to be in air conditioning. We have air conditioning in our home. We have air conditioning in our car. She has air conditioning nearly everywhere she is. She also has to have technological equipment with her a lot of times in order to communicate back and forth. Sometimes this equipment isn't always working correctly because of the intense heat. I feel that it's extremely important that we even accelerate this project and that we move these dates up because these children need to be comfortable as soon as possible. I feel that the cost that we're going to pay in taxes is a cost that's going to be absorbed by all. It's a fair cost, and it's a cost that's going to be spread out over many, many years. I think that it's a cost that's worth putting into our school, putting into the investment. The only part of the project that I don't agree with is that I understand the gymnasiums and the open areas not being air conditioned, but I feel that this area right here where we are in the auditorium should be included. We have many, many, many events here, and the events are, if you attend, are spectacular, and the children put a lot into it, and so do the parents. And we sit here in our good clothes, dressed up, proud of our children, and we sweat. And we sweat profusely. And our children aren't enjoying being under the lights. They're not enjoying their own performances. And the audience certainly isn't enjoying what they're seeing. So I think for the extra added cost to put the auditorium on, that's something that should be considered. This auditorium is a place where the community comes, and it's a showcase. And I think that we should showcase what we have, which is the talent of many, many, many talented students in this district, and that they deserve a place where they can be more comfortable. comfortable, and the parents deserve that comfort too. So I'd like to ask that you try to include the cost of the auditorium. I understand the gym and the open areas, but I'd like to see that. Thank you.
Just to address the auditorium for a minute, when these schools were built, air conditioning was part of the project, and it was taken out by a concerned citizens group, and this roof was then changed to a different, cheaper model. In order to air condition this area specifically, we would have to have a whole new roof and setting to put the air conditioning in, because the roof could not hold a condenser. And we also had the engineers look at some other options for us, and at this point, it would be extremely costly to air condition this. Also, we had the engineers look at the gymnasiums. At this point in time, they do not ever renovate gymnasium unless they're going to do a full renovation and then put air conditioning in. So our engineers have provided information to us that, again, most gymnasiums never do get air conditioned. The third thing is the cafeterias, and I'm sure this board will look at that down the road. We want to get the classrooms, if the board does agree to go with an air conditioned system, to get those done first, and then, maybe down the road we can look into the cafeterias. But it is a sad, Jane, I agree with you on the auditorium, but it's just the way it's built at this point. If they want to do a full renovation down the road, they would have to renovate the whole room in order to put the air conditioning in.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Thanks. Hi, my name's Chris Daniels. I live in Primrose off Belgium Hollow. I am a graduate of Fort Cherry 2000. I have to admit, I'm one of the lucky ones. I got to open up the elementary school and finished all the way through high school, and we never had air conditioning, obviously. And I'm not saying I'm for or against, but I don't ever remember a time in my school career that it was too hot or I was uncomfortable. And I think anyone sitting in this room right now can attest that I don't feel any air moving. So is there currently an issue with the ventilation system in the school?
We have had the ventilation checked. There are some aging ventilation in the hallways. They have been repaired. It's on a break fix. If the fans totally, completely fail on us, then those will be replaced as needed through our contingency budget or our maintenance budget. As far as this room in particular, there is not as much ventilation probably as we would like, but it does have circulation air. Fresh air does come in, but again, it's damper systems, it's aging electronics and mechanisms, and we do a break fix on all of those.
Well, is the ventilation system going to have to be upgraded along with the AC system, or are we talking two separate systems?
The unit ventilators that are in the classrooms, those are items that will need replaced whether we do air conditioning or not. So that was a $700,000. So the district in the next few years is going to have to start replacing those air ventilators because they are becoming of age. And they can make the choice, the board is looking at this, they make the choice of either adding in the cold water piping to eventually add air conditioning if they want, or they do it all together as one project.
Going back to my original point of being, like I said, I went to school here, whole career, never remember a day where it was too hot to be in the classroom. So I'm going off the theory that it was a brand new elementary, ventilation system worked fine. Brand new high school, ventilation system worked fine. So wouldn't it make more sense to table the air conditioning, get the ventilators fixed, look at the air conditioning down the road to see if there's any condition at that point?
Yep, and that's one of the options that this board's doing.
Oh, actually, one other quick
I have
point.
a comment just to help on that. One of the things, Chris, that has changed from your day, we could open the doors and open the windows
Yeah.
to ventilate. Due to security concerns now, the windows are closed and the doors are closed, and there's computers generating heat. So that does change. It's different from when you and I were there.
Okay. Is it also going to be addressed too that a number of these school districts that have had just AC put in have been closed due to mold issues and problems with the air conditioning systems? I mean, we got a couple people here with sick children, have this in for 6-7 months, and all of a sudden you got mold issues in the school. It can't be good for health.
Right, and I was just currently with Burgettstown Superintendent. They had the same issue we did 2 years ago. We had to do a restoration project in the elementary school because the damper system kept open in the night, which brought the humidity in, and it created not mold but mildew. And that's exactly what Burgettstown had, the same thing. Their damper system wasn't working properly, and they had the humid air come in, and it was in a closed environment, and they had what is considered mildew, not mold. And the other option is, if the board does go through with this project, that will be a closely monitored item, and that's something we've talked about with the engineers already, is how do you eliminate that from happening? You hope that you can eliminate it altogether, but what do you do to be the most conscientious of it? And the one thing that they did tell us is you would not run air conditioning in the summertime when no one is in the rooms, because there is not enough of body absorption to make that humidity be eaten up by anything. And that's what happens. That's how you get that mildew and mold, is because you have too much humidity.
We weren't asked specifically, but I want to share some facts. I'm going to ask you a question. We had a school day recently. We had early dismissal, right? So we had early dismissal because of the heat. Not just us, a bunch of schools in our area did. And Dr. Jacoby, you went around and you checked the temperature in some of the classrooms, right? Can you share with these folks what the temperature was?
Basically, I checked the temperature at 3 p.m. once the students were at the end of the day, and most of the elementary classrooms, depending on what side of the building they were anywhere from 86 to 92. There were a couple that were 95, pushing above that, and it's because that's where the hottest sides of our building are. It definitely makes a difference where you are in these buildings. And the other thing I was going to feed off of Mr. Briggs was, our windows only open 6 inches out, and that presents a problem too, because you can't get that constant air. We're up on the hill. I wish we had windmills, because it's blustery up here, but we don't have the facilities to open the windows to get that moving air into the classroom. So that's the other issue.
Yeah, and Mr. Briggs brought up a very good point. One of the things that we've talked about up here is safety and security, and we can't keep the doors propped open anymore. It's simply not acceptable in this day and age. All of our doors are kept closed now. So we certainly aren't getting that type of air ventilation. Any other questions, comments? Okay, did we pass out comment cards? So if you have a comment or a question that you'd like to make and you don't want to come up here and take the mic, feel free to fill out one of those comment cards, bring it up and hand it to Dr. Jacoby. We'd like to thank you for coming out. The board has been talking about this for an extended period of time, and we're going to keep talking about it, but we did want to hear what you all had to say. We're not here just to make the decisions. We'd like everyone's input in these decisions. We're your elected officials, and we'd like to know what your thoughts are. So thanks for coming up. We appreciate it. Have a good night.